Right now, if your boss asked you to do the most dangerous job in the company, you'd probably ask for a raise. In the Middle Ages, they offered something a little different: a chance to become rich, a chance to become famous, a chance to become a knight. And all you had to do was climb a ladder. Sounds easy. It wasn't, because this ladder was leaning against the wall of an enemy city. Hundreds of defenders were waiting at the top. And statistically speaking, you were about to die. Not eventually, not someday, in the next few minutes. The rocks were already waiting. The arrows were already nocked. The boiling liquids were already heating over the fire. And somehow, men still volunteered. Not because they were stupid, not because they were fearless, because the reward for surviving was so enormous that some men decided death was worth the gamble. Unfortunately for most of them, they never got to collect. Let's go back to the beginning. You are born sometime in the Middle Ages. Not a lord, not a prince, not a wealthy merchant, just another peasant with very few options and even fewer choices. Your father farms, his father farmed, you will probably farm too, unless war finds you first. And war always finds somebody. By your late teens, you've learned a simple truth. The world is divided into two groups: people who own land and people who work it. You belong to the second group, which means no matter how hard you work, no matter how many years you spend bent over in the fields, your life will probably look exactly like your father's. Same land, same poverty, same ending. The local lord owns everything: the land, the grain, the forests, the roads, even most of your future. For many men, this is simply how life works. For you, it's unbearable. You want more. Not because you're greedy, because you've seen what happens to old peasants. Their backs bend permanently. Their teeth fall out one by one. Their children inherit the exact same poverty. Then one day a herald rides into your village. The king is raising an army. A city has rebelled. A rival lord refuses to surrender. The details barely matter. What matters is this: soldiers are needed, and soldiers get paid. For the first time in your life, a different future appears on the horizon. It's dangerous, but at least it's different. You join. At first, military life feels exciting. You march through lands you've never seen. You eat better than you did back home. You meet veterans with stories that sound completely impossible. One claims he's survived 4 sieges. Another says he climbed a wall under full arrow fire and walked away. One old soldier swears he became genuinely wealthy after a single assault. You assume he's lying. Then he shows you the silver. Maybe he isn't. Eventually, your army arrives at its target: a city. Massive stone walls rise above the landscape. Towers overlook every possible approach. Banners hang from the battlements like they're mocking you personally. The defenders look impossibly secure up there. Looking at those walls, you find yourself wondering how anyone could ever take them. Then your commander explains the plan. Ladders. Lots of ladders. The veterans go quiet immediately, because everybody knows what comes next. The first men up those ladders almost never survive. Think about it carefully. The defenders have every single advantage imaginable: height, gravity, cover, weeks of preparation. You have none of those things. Imagine climbing a ladder with weapons and armor strapped to your body. Now imagine dozens of people directly above you actively trying to end your life. That's a siege assault. Defenders don't even need good aim. A rock dropped from 30 feet doesn't miss. A spear thrust downward doesn't need precision. An axe can remove hands from ladder rungs without any particular skill. And despite what every movie shows you, boiling oil was actually rare. Oil was expensive. Most cities couldn't afford to waste it on ladder climbers. They preferred cheaper alternatives: boiling water, heated sand, lime powder, burning pitch. All of them ruin your day equally well. Hot sand was considered especially horrible. The grain slipped through the gaps in armor and kept burning long after impact. Men screamed for hours afterward. There were also defenders with long forked poles. Their entire job was to find a ladder with men on it and push it sideways. The ladder would swing out slowly. Hover for one terrible second. Then the whole column of men would fall. You quickly realize something important. Being second up the ladder is terrible. Being first is suicide. Which raises an obvious question. Why would anyone volunteer? The answer has a name: the Forlorn Hope. The name sounds dramatic because it was. A Forlorn Hope was a group of volunteers assigned the single most dangerous task in any assault. They went first. Everyone knew most wouldn't return. That's precisely why commanders had to offer incentives. Enormous incentives. Land grants. Cash bonuses large enough to change a family's situation permanently. Instant promotions that skipped years of service. Status that followed a man for the rest of his life. Sometimes even knighthood. For a poor peasant born with nothing, these rewards weren't just attractive. They were life-altering. One successful assault could elevate an entire family. A man born in the mud could die owning property. Suddenly that ladder doesn't look quite so terrifying, at least not from a distance. Stories spread through camp quickly. One volunteer received enough silver to buy land. Another was promoted to officer within a week. Another married into a family that previously wouldn't have looked at him twice. The success stories travel fast. The dead men don't tell theirs. That's the trick. Nobody brags about the hundreds who never made it halfway up the wall. Nobody sings about the volunteer whose ladder tipped backward into open air. Nobody writes poems about the man crushed under falling stones before he reached the third rung. History remembers winners. Sieges produce mostly losers. Then your chance arrives. The commander announces the rewards for assault volunteers, the most generous offer you have ever heard in your life, enough to change everything. Around you, men hesitate. Then one steps forward, then another, then another. To your own surprise, you step forward too. The moment feels genuinely heroic for about 5 minutes. Then assault day arrives, and reality comes back very quickly. The ladders move toward the walls. Arrows fill the sky immediately. The defenders were ready. Of course they were ready. They've been watching your preparations for weeks. The first ladder reaches the wall. The first volunteer begins climbing. Everyone watches. Halfway up, a stone crashes into his shoulder. He falls. The second man climbs directly over his body. An arrow finds his neck. He falls too. The ladder keeps moving, because war doesn't stop for individual tragedies. Now it's your turn. The ladder shakes under your boots. Men are screaming on every side of you. Someone above tips burning pitch onto the ladder next to yours. The entire column erupts into chaos. You keep climbing anyway, because going back down is just as dangerous as going up. 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet. The wall grows closer. You can finally see the defenders' faces. They're not monsters. They're terrified too. They're fathers, sons, brothers, men who understand exactly what happens to their families if you reach the top. For one brief moment, both sides understand the exact same thing. One of you is about to die. Then the fighting begins. The top of a siege ladder is one of the worst places in the history of warfare. You cannot dodge. You cannot retreat. You cannot maneuver. You simply fight or fall. The man beside you falls first, then another, then another. The rungs become slick. The noise is overwhelming. Steel hits steel. Men scream. Wood splinters somewhere below you. More volunteers keep climbing up behind you. They have no idea what's waiting above them. Then something impossible happens. You reach the wall. Against every odd, against every probability, you're alive. More soldiers flood onto the battlements. The defenders begin giving ground. The gate is attacked from the inside. Hours later, the city falls. And suddenly you're a hero. The rewards are real. The promotion is real. The money is real. The future you imagined is finally within reach. But as you walk through the captured city, you notice something. Most of the men who stepped forward with you aren't here. The soldier from your village, gone. The veteran who showed you the silver, gone. The young man who wanted to prove something to his father, gone. The Forlorn Hope succeeded. Most of the men did not. That's why it was called the Forlorn Hope in the first place. Not because victory was impossible, because the men chosen to achieve it were expected to pay for that victory with their lives. And yet every single siege in history produced more volunteers. Because there has always been someone willing to gamble everything for a chance at something better. Sometimes they became rich, sometimes they became famous, sometimes they became knights. Most became statistics. And if you were the first man up the siege ladder, you usually didn't live long enough to enjoy a single one of the rewards waiting at the top.